Hello
Hello.
everyone. My name is Nim Grinvald. I am the technical evangelist here at Kintone. Joining me today, Genji Fujimori, our developer advocate from Cybos, our parent company. Genji, happy Wednesday for you.
Thank you. Yes.
It never gets old asking you what's it like in the future.
The future is still the same. It's pretty much the same as yesterday.
Same as yesterday. Well, for those of you who are joining us on our live stream for today, we're going to pick up where we left off, which is building a Kintone plugin with React. We've got this plugin called Table Utility Plugin, and what it does is it extends the behavior of the native table functionality in Kintone. And the plugin that we have was built with jQuery, and you can see the legacy of jQuery in the code over here. Oh, let me pull this out a little bit. And so anytime we are handling elements on the page, we've got to literally like put them down and handle the data flow manually among the different elements. What we're going to be doing today is continuing our conversion from jQuery into React. So, Genji, any questions before we begin?
No, let's just dive right in.
We'll dive right in. Okay, so high level, this is what we're going to be covering today. We're going to be covering Create React App. It's a bunch of boilerplate code that makes it very easy to set up a React app. And there's a bunch of stuff that we don't need over there. In fact, Kintone, creating a Kintone plugin has its own set of boilerplate code. We're going to be mashing the two together, figuring out what we need, keeping that, what we got to throwing that out. And then we are going to get the original settings page code. We're going to convert that old settings code into React code. So we'll be able to display like a single page application in our configuration settings. And then we'll that's going to be what we're covering today. Cool. So for those of you who are new to JavaScript, who are new to Kintone, I would consider this session to be intermediate level. This is like if you're comfortable with JavaScript but you've never played with React, or you've never played with Kintone, or both, this is a good place for you to be today. All right, so let's walk us through what our file directory structures look like, so that we can understand how this navigation is happening. Like we can make sense of it. Okay, so we're going to be looking at this folder called starting point. Now, this is a typical directory structure for a Kintone plugin. Ultimately, a Kintone plugin, it compresses to a single zip file, which then gets uploaded to the Kintone server by an administrator. And then, depending on your access inside of Kintone, you will then activate the plugin for various different parts of your Kintone environment. Ultimately, you can imagine a plugin as like a Google Chrome extension. It makes some behavior happen in certain places, and you can change the settings inside of a settings page, right? And that settings page is different for every Chrome extension. So what we're doing with a plugin is we've got to handle the changes to the native behavior, and then we've got to handle the settings page. So what we're focusing on when we're building the plugin today is going to be that settings page. So let's take a look at this directory structure just to review. This plugin.zip file, this is ultimately what's going to get uploaded into Kintone. Kintone needs to be able to read this file and distinguish like a unique identifier for each plugin. And that's what this little PPK file is. This is a private key that uniquely distinguishes a plugin so that when we upload it into Kintone, it'll overwrite itself and not any other plugin that's already there as we're updating it. This manifest.json file is what Kintone reads when it uploads the plugin file and then begins to make heads or tails of what's in it and how it works. It tells Kintone where the CSS is, where the HTML is, any image files that are relevant. Typically, there's like a 64 by 64 pixel image that you can use as like an icon for the plugin, and then where the JavaScript is. That's what all of this information tells us, as well as any kind of required parameters and descriptions for this information. And also, if we've got JavaScript, we've got any kind of libraries that we are referencing, but are not loaded into the plugin, that are not like files that have been included in the plugin, this is where they're linked inside of here. Okay, and then this stuff is pretty much this stuff is boilerplate, and then you might say, okay, well, desktop and config, what are those? Well, config is the behavior that manages the configuration settings, and desktop is the behavior that manages the actual changes in functionality that we're going after. Kintone config helper is a file that makes it easier to handle like routine behaviors that we want from our plugin builds. So this is where the JavaScript lives, and we're also going to take a quick look at where the HTML lives, since this is the HTML of the config page. Right now, it's populated with all of this stuff over here. Ultimately, we're going to be making some changes to this today, which is going to be where the value of React comes in. So our major players inside of the this table utility plugin are going to be this config.html and then these JavaScript files. Genji, anything I'm missing? Any questions you think people might have, or questions that you have?
Nope, that was very straightforward.
Cool. We're going to switch over into a different folder that I've got open, a different directory I've got open called React Table Utility Plugin. Okay. What we'll see here, this is the result of us running create React app, which we did in our last session. You can run create React app by making sure that npm is installed on your machine, and then running can run npx create-react-app, and then a folder that the app is going to open up into. So that brings us here. Now let's take a look at what's inside. Since this is what we're expecting, this is an npm. This has been built with npm. We've got a package.json. This is going to tell us all of our different packages and what they're doing, as well as any kind of scripts that are built in over here. This is entirely create React app boilerplate. We're not going to touch it. We also have information on the files that get built out when we run npm run build. Ultimately, those are the files that are going to get put into this this plugin. And then we've got node modules. We've got other sort of this config folder, which is basically React create React app handling some things on the back end. We talked a little bit about this magic that's happening. Actually, we talked at some length about the magic that's happening over here in our last live stream. What we want to know about it today is just that there's a whole bunch of magic that happens so we can focus on writing JavaScript or JSX and have React interpret the JSX, which is not real JavaScript, interpret that syntactic sugar and spit out a file that is legit JavaScript we can put into another place and have it be read and have it be useful. Okay. now let's go into the source. The last time that we got together, we started ripping out files that are not relevant to us anymore. And what we kept was app.js. And actually, let's go ahead and see what we've got over here. So what we did is we ripped out a lot of this boilerplate, and we added these CSS files. These CSS files come straight from the plugin. And then in app.js, we are able to return this JSX over here. It looks exactly like HTML, but you might be asking, what's HTML doing in JavaScript? And that's exactly what the beauty of React is, that based on the hidden stuff that's happening behind the scenes, it can interpret this React and do something useful with it. Index.js is ultimately what is getting rendered over here. This is our entry. This is our entry point into the app. Okay. So what are we going to talk about first? Well, first of all, let's spin up. Let's spin up our development script. So just going to take a quick look over here. We've got npm start. So we'll go ahead and we will npm run start. This is going to spin up a development server. Oh, what's happening over here? This is no search file. Not being able to find a file. React. Oh, that's because.
Is it inside one more folder?
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, there it is. Okay, now let's try that again. Cool. So in just a few moments, I'm going to have a tab pop up on my browser, and it'll start the development server. And in fact, that's what's loading right now on localhost.
Always the loading screen.
Gonna show, and great. So it looks like it just popped up on my side. Before we go there, let's understand what's happening over here. What we've done so far. We've got this index.html file. Okay, and no, actually, that's not what we're looking for right now. Here we are inside of app. So what? So Genji, let me just give you a quick pop quiz. So what are we expecting to see right now if we load up our development server? Before I go ahead and I show it.
The thing that is so you have app.js, but my immediate guess would be whatever is inside index.js will be presented, and index.js is importing from .app. Oh, I see. So it's going to be is it going to be able to output your app.js? It will try to render our Kintone settings within the website, but I don't know what the output's going to be.
Okay, and what kind of questions could you ask that could help you determine what the output is going to be?
So app.js is going to be calling config.css and 51 modern CSS file. I don't know how that's going to be interpreted by React. So that would be my first question: is how is the CSS going to be interpreted?
How is the CSS going to be interpreted? Interesting.
Just because both were were set assuming Kintone window, right?
Assuming Kintone window.
Yeah, it was written to assume that's going to be uploaded to a very specific context.
Yeah.
So the CSS will be looking for particular things, a particular divs with tags. Another question I would have is where will we be pulling? So because see, our Kintone script was pulling information from Kintone itself, like the fields and whatnot. So that's going to be pulling, and also jQuery is still there. I don't know how jQuery is going to live inside React.
Okay, so that's a it sounds like your head is in a lot of places right now. Let's simplify.
Okay.
So right now in this React table utility plugin,
Mm-hmm.
there are some things that are very clearly missing in order for it to become a real Kintone plugin. The first is a plugin zip file, right? Then in order to get a plugin zip file, we need JavaScript, CSS, and HTML. The JavaScript needs to be for a config settings page. The JavaScript also needs to be to do the native functionality, to do like the extended functionality that we want to do, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So currently, React table utility plugin has almost none of that. What we have is the CSS that we dropped in.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have these two files, app.js and index.js. Now, I'll say something about the way React apps get built, and more generally speaking, the way apps with something like a build tool called Webpack get built. In order to turn our source code, in order to take all of we've got some function, right? Some build tool that takes all of our source code, we put it in, and then what we get out is a JavaScript file that we can use, right? So we need to figure out so the build tool needs to be able to parse the source code, and in order to do that, it needs an entry point. So we need to tell the build tool where to start it thinking about and kind of spider webbing our source code.
Okay.
And we can do that inside of the package JSON. There's a place where we will, no, I'm sorry, it's not going to be here. It'll be inside of Webpack, where we'll define the entry point. We're not going to go into Webpack right now. All I'll say is that React has set it up so that index.js is the starting point, is the entry point. So the build tool knows, okay, we're here. This is the first thing that we are going to look at. And then we start importing from different places, importing. React and React DOM are libraries. App, what we're doing is we're importing a module from app.js, which we'll come back to very soon. And we're rendering something on the page. Where are we rendering it? We're going to find an element on the HTML with the ID of root, okay? And then we're going to find it, and we're going to start appending things to it. What are we appending to it? We're going to append something to it called react.strict mode, which is an element. Basically, this is sort of like if you've ever done use strict for any kind of ES5, React has its own strict mode that makes it easier to work with if you're an engineer or a developer. And it's being put around ultimately the the salient element for us to render, which is app. Where did this come from? This is not, just like React.strict mode, app is not a real HTML element. It is syntactic sugar for something called app, which we got from the app.js file. So let's continue the scavenger hunt. And we're going to go into app.js. So now here we are. The builds tool has started its entry path over here. It started looking up all of the things to add into the global namespace over here and over here and over here. And we've moved into here. And now we've got more things to add to the global namespace, our 2 CSS files, 1, 2. And we've created a function called app, which is going to return. And then here we go, there's more JSX. And actually this is copied and pasted. This is our HTML from the config file in our original plugin. Okay, the one that had jQuery in it. Following me so far?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now let me just quickly show you what it looks like. We gotta sign in over here. Hold on one moment. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you what the plugin settings page looks like inside of Kintone. Okay, this is the settings page that we are looking to replicate. Row number, please select a row number, and then there's a drop down over here with some information that's in here, and cancel and save. Okay. And so you see that's the HTML that we have over here. But in React, what we're going to do is we're going to take that information that was previously in HTML. We're going to copy it over and paste it into, for the moment, into app.
Nice.
We've essentially moved our HTML into the JavaScript. Okay. And what that looks like when we then load up our development server looks like this. So here we're running a React development server, and it's rendering our React code.
Sorry, can
It's
you zoom
injecting
in?
that.
Oh,
go ahead.
Sorry, if you could zoom in, that would be great.
Sure. Let's zoom in. How's this?
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Terrific. Wow. So this is exactly what. It's not exactly what we would expect to see, but it's close enough that this is like we're in good shape over here. Okay. So now, how did we do that? Ultimately, we put HTML in JavaScript, and it showed up over here inside of our HTML, but it needed to go somewhere. Well, this development server actually runs on the HTML is a file called index.html. It's got a whole bunch of other stuff over here. And then it's got this div ID root. And this is where the magic happens. This is like the key thing to understand about the way React works with HTML. Ultimately, you could create HTML that is literally like you rip off everything except this one short line, div ID equals root. And then React knows where to hook in all of this behavior. all of this rendering of these elements. You following, Genji?
Yeah.
So it's not enough though that we've created this app function. We need to export it. We're exporting app. So that way index can import app from this file. You can imagine each file, each JavaScript file as like its own, it needs to be carefully fenced in order to not leak variables into the global namespace, which means we very carefully need to tell each separate JavaScript file what's going in other words, what we're importing, right? And what we are exporting. And then we've got this build tool that spider webs through React and puts all the pieces together and spits out a file, okay? A file which we could spit out if we npm run build. And let's, you know what? Let's cd. Okay, so we can run npm run build. And what it's going to do is where that build tool is going to spider web through our code, through our source code, and it's going to spit out a file, which typically, you know, an optimized production build, code that is designed to be machine readable, not human readable. And we actually noticed that we're spitting out a few different chunks, is what they're called. Okay. Here's what I'll say about these chunks. Not all of these matter to us right now. Like this CSS file doesn't matter. And what we're looking for is the file called main. Okay. Actually, let me double check that. So we'll go into build, and then we can go into static, and then JS. And these are our different files. You'll notice that we've got source map as well as a regular file over here. And this looks like non-intuitive stuff, but we can actually go on the React website and ask it for clarification. Sorry, on the create React app documentation, and clarify which one of these files, like what all this stuff means. So we can go ahead and pull that out over here. And what we're looking for is main.hash.chunk.js. We've got other stuff that could be vendor code. This is Webpack runtime logic. Okay. What we'll do is we can grab this information and copy it and then drop it inside of the JavaScript file of our plugin. Now, this doesn't make any sense to us, right? It should. Yeah. It's machine readable. This is like final version stuff. This is final version stuff. So when when we're ready, what we'll do is we'll change the manifest file. We can actually change these names too. We can say, we can change these names, or we can add them as is to this config JavaScript. and then we can, and then we've got all the code that we need to then ultimately bundle as a plugin file and upload into Kintone. Genji, how are we doing so far? Is this making sense?
It makes sense. I'm just curious. I don't know what to expect when it works. I was also curious why you said the CSS it doesn't matter. So,
when I said the CSS doesn't matter.
Sorry, when you say when you're creating a production build.
Oh, I take that back. It matters, but for our I'm sorry, that was a software engineer bias, is what you heard. What you heard is as long as the damn thing works, that's what's important.
Okay. Thank you.
Those are just my biases as like a software engineer and a sales engineer, that if we can get the proof of concept working, then all the nice visuals and stuff are sort of like the rest of the damn owl. Are sort of like icing on the cake. It's a fair thing to call me out on, which is if we're actually doing the soup to nuts, then like of course the CSS is important.
Oh, okay.
What I want to point out over here is that currently our HTML file looks like this, but we don't want this anymore. We put this into the React, into the React code. So what we actually want over here, oops, what did I do? What we want to do is we want to get rid of all of this HTML, and we want to polish off that one line that we were talking about, and all that React code's going to hook into here.
Another question I have.
Sure.
Config.js, the desktop.js, since we haven't imported into the React and it wasn't included in the build, we still need it independently?
I want to clarify something. Currently, our table utility plugin is not in any shape to be uploaded into Kintone.
Oh, okay.
Whatsoever.
Thank you.
Included in what you're fairly calling out is, what about all this behavior that we didn't account for? What about all this stuff that's in jQuery? You're absolutely right, Genji. We didn't do anything with it yet. All we did was replicate the HTML that was sitting inside of the plugin. We replicated it in React by turning it into JSX, and then making the HTML file trivial, because all it contains for our purposes is a single line with a div ID root.
I see. Okay, thank you. That helped
now,
me.
You notice, if you've got eagle eyes, you'll notice that we've got populated drop downs over here. What do you think is going to happen when I click on this drop down over here in our development server?
Probably a console error. Console is going to be filled with errors each time you click on it.
Okay, well.
Oh, okay, no errors.
We just have nothing, because there's no behavior yet to manage the getting of information from a Kintone REST API. All we've done is handle the front end, and it was fairly easy, to be honest with you. We just copied and pasted from an existing HTML file over there on the plugin. But what's cool is that now all of our code can be focused on handling the behavior around getting this information and rendering it. There's a lot of stuff we don't need to worry about anymore. A lot of this we can begin to convert in a way that's going to be, I think, a lot more readable, a lot easier to reason about. We just haven't gotten there yet. So what we can expect is that we're going to need some additional JavaScript over here that we can code in React that'll help us handle some of the behavior, like what happens when I click on this drop-down element. In fact, what we could do is we can clean up some of this HTML. We can create, instead of this select number field, we can actually create, we can create like a React input element and use React to handle the behavior of getting that information and then allowing the user to select it. Sounds good?
Sounds good.
Cool. Well, this is where we will pick up for next time.
All right.
All right. Any questions, Genji?
I have been curious of what kind of errors are being popped up. I just they're too small for me to see.
Yeah,
my
let's
screen.
take a look. There's an DOM property in index.js line 1. Okay, what is that? Index.js line 1 at span label. These seem to be throwing. These seem to be throwing errors around the use of the attribute class, which, for reasons I don't recall, in React.
Oh, React doesn't like class. Yeah.
Yes.
They have different
right.
something else.
So what we're going to do is we're going to change all of that to class name. Okay. And then React is also throwing us a complaint saying you are doing the same thing with for. So there's an attribute called for, and actually it's telling us to use HTML 4. See? Oops.
Oh.
So now we can save, and we can rerun the app, reload the page, and you see that those these errors have dropped out.
Thank you. I was curious about that.
One of the great things about the console and about using React is that the errors are very easy to understand in many cases. Especially if they're React specific, React does a very good job of communicating. All right.
All right. Looking forward to implementing the config.js into React for our next live stream.
Sounds good. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody. See you soon.
Bye-bye.